All right. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the CCHA COVID-19 preparedness plan. And my name is Dana Savoie. I'm the president of CCHA, and I'm joined by my partner in crime, Holly Cheetah, who plays many roles in our association. And tonight, she is our lead for CCHA COVID-19 preparedness. So the two of us, our goals and objectives of the evening are going to be to take you through some of the key points of the plan. Just as a reminder, the plan is posted out on the CCHA website. If you just go to the main page, there's some distinct icons right when you get there, and one of them is the preparedness plan. So please know that anything that we are talking to will be in the plan. We will also post this presentation that is a little bit more succinct with some of the key questions that the two of us keep getting. So we wanted to be able to effectively roll through the key points. Our goal is to really only take about 15 minutes to highlight the core things that we have been being asked most frequently. And then we do want to give everybody the opportunity to ask specific questions if we don't hit on them through the dialogue. So please don't be shy about using the chat function to post your questions. Holly will be monitoring them. And after I get through a few of the slides here, we will be moving forward to address those questions. So thank you in advance for attending this session. And this is something that we are doing to alleviate this topic being the center of attention at your parent meetings. So your commissioners, depending on when your tryouts are, you may or may not have seen a parent meeting yet. They're usually a week or two before your tryouts start. If you are a lower level, there may or may not be team meetings, but we're using this forum here to really address the COVID questions as they're going to be consistent throughout the association. So let's go ahead and get started. I think one of the key things that we really wanted to ground everybody on from our association is that this plan that we've derived is not something that CCHA has established or made up in a vacuum. We are taking directives from USA Hockey, Minnesota Hockey, and District 6. In addition, we are also having to adhere to all of the policy of our home rinks. So Victoria and Chaska Community Center, they also have their rink plans due to their facilities. And even if Minnesota Hockey makes a recommendation or a suggestion, we must defer ultimately to our rinks and the guidelines that they have. Therefore, as you travel throughout the season and have questions about why one rink does something differently, we thought it was very important to ground this discussion on the fact that each rink must adhere to their own, each association must adhere to that rink's policy, whether it's our home rink or away. If we do not follow these rules, we are at risk of having our season canceled. So I think the moral of the story as we go through is that this is not a normal year. This is a year of uncertainty. We are living each week by week, really understanding what new protocols and guidelines are in place. We will, from just availability of the most recent data, every Sunday night, we will be looking at the COVID plan, and where there were updates by any of the different USA, Minnesota, District 6, or our rinks, we will make those updates and then repost a new policy on Sunday evenings. In order to make it easy for everyone, Holly will be highlighting in red the changes from the previous plan. So you can quickly see if there are any changes, and if in fact there's anything major, we will be sending out communications to the association. So let's go ahead and get started. A lot of questions are coming from before you come to the rink. So this shouldn't be a lot of new information. Many of the other sports in the area are doing the same. In addition, our school systems, really going into any restaurants, malls, shopping, check for your temperature or other systems. You know, there is a symptom checker, but the moral of the story here is if you're sick, stay home. Also, you need to make sure that if you have been in contact with somebody who has COVID, then you also need to stay home. And then we would like you to communicate this to your team manager as soon as possible so they can take the necessary protocol. Team managers will have a separate training around COVID that we will not go into this session, but if you're on here and thinking about being a team manager, then don't worry, we will have additional training for all of those roles and positions. So with regards to arrival at the rink, all players, coaches, and parents must wear a mask into the rink at all times. In addition, there will not be arrival into the rink more than 15 minutes before your scheduled ice time, and your players should come fully dressed. You want to make sure that we know winter is coming and it's going to be cold potentially outside, but you have shortened times in the locker rooms. So please try to come fully dressed, walk in with your skates and your stick and your water bottle pre-filled. As you can see from the slide, we have arranged with the various rinks in the locker room how many players can be in each locker room. There will be X's to kind of show where the players sit, and there will obviously still be locker monitors that will have somewhat additional responsibilities this year. So now as we move to on the ice, players do not have to wear a mask while on the ice, but per some of the latest guidelines coming down from USA Hockey, coaches will be required to wear a mask on the ice and on the bench. We will be following the pod concept. Again, this is something that we've heard a lot about through the updates. For practices, we will maintain 2 pods of 25 people. Players and coaches are considered in that pod, and we are going to be unable to mix pods. This is due to the fact that if somebody does report a COVID situation, we can quickly identify what other kids were in that pod and communicate appropriately to the team manager, who will in turn report out to the team. There will be no indoor dry land at this point. As for getting off the ice, the process is going to be get off the ice as fast as possible, take off your skates, and exit immediately. Once your helmet is off, the players must put their mask back on, and then the exit rules will be unique to each rink. Currently, for CCC, you're going to exit through the main doors, and for Victoria, you would enter into the front doors, but exit out through the back parking lot, either through west or the east back doors. Coaches will remain at the rink until all players have left with a parent, if you are a lower level, or have been picked up by a parent from an upper level standpoint. So now let's get into a little bit about tryouts. For tryouts, we're asking that people still arrive 45 minutes ahead of time, no later than 30. We will be checking in at the exterior concessions window in front of the Victoria rink. Players will get a penny, and they will keep that penny for the entire tryout. Players will need to come into the rink fully dressed with no bags allowed in the rink. And it's really important, as we've learned through the Bantam tryouts, to ensure kids are leaving their bag in the car and not leaving them outside of the rink, as there will be nobody watching them. We will allow kids for tryouts into the rink 15 minutes before their ice time. Goalies do have the ability to enter 20 minutes before. Parents of lower level players and squirt goalies can enter to assist with skates and gear. This is one parent only. On to games and scrimmages. In-state games are currently allowed. Travel outside of Minnesota or against any out-of-state team must be approved by D6. So all of those must go towards the commissioner of your team, and then in turn, we will facilitate getting approval by D6. For standard tournaments that we've been in historically for the upper levels, like Fargo, ones that are pretty standard, we have not seen issues with those being approved, but we are quickly ensuring that all of those are very much aligned and D6 is giving us approval. There's only 2 coaches allowed on the bench. And one of the changes that was actually made this week is that there is only 1 volunteer allowed in the box, and they will be responsible for score sheet, clock, penalty box. Unless there are adults living in the same household, then 2 will be allowed. So if you have a husband and wife couple that you both want to come into the box and facilitate those responsibilities, then that will be allowed. We absolutely understand that for one person to do all of those roles would be daunting. We have gone back to D6 for reconsideration of this rule and are waiting for their response.
Danny, I'm gonna bump in quick. We had a question and I forgot to put it on the PowerPoint. It is in the plan for
Perfect.
Tryouts. Goalies can bring in their bags. Skaters, no bags, and goalies are allowed to bring in their bags 20 minutes ahead of time.
Thanks, Holly. Appreciate that.
You're welcome. Oh, I got one more question. You want me to do that quick?
Go for it.
Sorry. Will masks in the locker room be required until they put their helmet on? Yes. So it is. They walk in, they sit down, they're getting skates on, whatever, keep your mask on. When it's time to put the helmet on, mask comes off. You get off the ice, take your helmet off, mask goes back on.
Correct. And the locker monitors will absolutely be enforcing those rules as part of their responsibility. Great. Thanks, Holly. All right, let's talk about spectators. This has been one of the more passionate topics that we've gotten some questions on regarding COVID. Remember, this is not a CCHA policy. This is a absolute facility policy. So if you are comparing this to other rinks, then just know that every rink has the ability to make their own rules. We have worked with CCC and Vic to allow 1 spectator per practice for age 10 and under, with no siblings, and for age 11 and up, no spectators for practices, pick up and drop off outside. For games and scrimmages, age 10 and under, 1 spectator, again, no siblings, and 1 spectator for age 11 and up. With regards to the siblings, we have gotten feedback based on situations of possibly being a single parent, etc. We continue to go back to CCC and Vic to provide these examples. At this point in time, they continue to hold strong with the no siblings approach. So that is, again, nothing that we are trying to influence, but we cannot make the ultimate decision on. The other hot topic is around refunds. So there are no refunds to a player for missed practice, games, or tournaments due to a COVID-19 diagnosis. If the season is canceled early due to COVID, then there will be refunds granted after adjusting for all prorated operational costs. So if we play for 2 months and then the last 2 months is canceled, then we will prorate all of the operating expenses and then refund the amount, the total amount to all members of the association for that prorated cost. If a player chooses to withdraw, then refunds will be issued based on our CCHA operating policy handbook, which is also located on the website, pages 35 and 36. And no refunds will be issued for any jersey or apparel purchases, and no refunds for the amount that you had to pay for your USA hockey registration. We're hopeful that we will be able to have the entire season, but we wanted to be very transparent with our refund policy, just in case this is something that we have to deal with. All right, we only have a couple more slides to get to, so please pop in your questions to the chat, and once we finish, we'll make sure we address them. For volunteers, if you're awaiting test results or someone in your family is awaiting test results, do not fulfill your shift. Please contact Kelly Olson at her volunteer CC Hockey org address as early as possible if you're staying home, so we can ensure that we get additional volunteers. If you don't contact Kelly prior to your shift, then there will be a $25 fine per the volunteer policy. No credit for missed shifts, and you will still need to fulfill the hours. So now let's talk about a little bit if my player is sick. If you do feel ill and you're already at the rink, the player will be removed and parents will be contacted immediately to come get the player. So if you are dropping a child off, please be cognizant that during this period of time to ensure that you will be able to be contacted effectively in case you need to come back and get a player. If a player tests positive, you will notify your team manager immediately, and then we will work with the MDH, Minnesota Department of Health, to notify those who may have been exposed. As for quarantining, there's been several questions. We will handle each of these cases aligned to the Minnesota Department of Health's directions and guidelines. At this point in time, we do not foresee entire teams being quarantined if in fact there was one positive case, but we will be following those roles and responsibilities. As I did in the introductions, Holly, and you can contact her at her lowergirls@cchockey.org address, is our main COVID lead. And then obviously myself am actively involved and partnering with Holly to ensure that we are following all our procedures, rules, and responsibilities. If you are a team manager and you do have a COVID positive reporting, then you will be contacting our VP of Admin, Chris Parrington, at the email address below, who will facilitate and coordinate the next steps with regards to all of the actions that need to take place. A couple other items that I just want to touch on. The game schedules for the upper levels from a D6 perspective are going to be less than historically we had. So in a Pee Wee season, you could have upwards of 22 district games, not including tournaments. What D6 is doing is actually managing that to a lower level of around 16 or so. If in fact somebody tests positive and we need to call in and cancel that game, there will not be penalties to the team or fees for that team, and the games will be rescheduled. So this season will be a little bit different with not having as many games at the upper levels as historically we have had, in order to leave some additional ice time for potential of game cancellations, etc. So with that said, that kind of ends the key points that we wanted to highlight where we have received the most questions. I'd say at this point, Holly, let's turn it over to you for any questions in the chat.
I have a really good question here, and Dana, I don't have the answer to this. Hopefully you can help. What about refunds, coaching fees?
Refunds for, say that again, you cut out a little bit.
Sorry, refunds for coaching fees.
Yeah, so refunds for coaching fees, that is not a question that has come up yet. So what we will do is take the action to follow up with our treasurer with regards to that, and then we will follow up with any questions that we couldn't answer in an email out to the association, or append them to this document before we post it to the website. And I'll let people know that those frequently asked questions are posted out there. So the first one's a stumper. So there you have it.
Yeah, it's a good question. A follow-up question to someone who joined a little bit late. Does this mean I can't bring my other child to the rink? Unfortunately, as the rules stand right now, yes.
Yep.
We are asking for reconsideration from both rinks. Again, it comes from the rink, not CCHA or even Minnesota Hockey. It's each individual rink. And right now they say no other children other than players. And let's see, are coaches on the bench required to wear masks? Yes.
Yes.
Bench and on the ice. Unless the coach is doing very strenuous activities where a mask would make breathing difficult. That's the rule. And then finally, we have Rachel wanting to ask a question about rule enforcement. So I don't know if Rachel, if you want to pop on and maybe expand that a little bit, which just the COVID plan in general, or I'm not sure quite what you mean by rule enforcement.
And we may need to take Rachel off mute if.
Okay.
Here. Well, so I'll take that one and kind of do try to answer it. And then Rachel, if this doesn't address your question, then please feel free to unmute and clarify a little bit. So rule enforcement around COVID guidelines. So if for some reason you're at a game and you see two people that are parents coming in with the game, we've gotten questions around who's policing the activity there. We will be asking the team managers to ensure that their teams are following the policies. We will not be having individuals at every game sitting there handing out wristbands at this point. There are some rinks that are handing out wristbands. We may even be doing this for something like our Brick City tournament, because for Brick City, the policy still applies with only one spectator. If there are individuals not wearing masks in the locker room, it will be the responsibility of the locker room monitor to be monitoring those situations. And we're asking that the coaches are also monitoring that. So from a COVID rules and following those, that is kind of the answer there. So if Rachel, that did not answer your question, please feel free to chime in. Otherwise, hopefully that addressed it. Any other questions you see out there, Holly?
Yeah, there's just, a lot about the rule, like enforcement issues. If there are coaches that are not masking, how do they address that? How does either, a spectator watching the game, or maybe a player points it out, where should they go if coaches or other team members are not appropriately masking?
Your team manager is going to be your point of contact for any concerns related to following the rules around COVID. What we are saying to the coaches, if you need to scream something to the team through the mask, you can pull down your mask, give a direction, and then put your mask back up. We've told the coaches that, as long as they are socially distanced from the players, for them to hear the instructions on the ice, that would be acceptable. But the mask cannot come off fully.
And same with, what if kids are often breaking the rules and we have continuous offenders? Again, we're going to have locker room monitors in the locker room. Team managers are going to report, and they're going to have the information on who to report to. Correct, Dana? And then we'll take the appropriate actions.
Correct. We just ask that all of you, we know that, this mask situation with the kids sometimes is easier said than done. Hopefully with all the protocol we've had in the school system, they're getting used to the mask, and it's becoming really part of our normal odd world we're living in right now. So.
Another good question about explanation of the pod size limit of 25. Example, a single team has 14 players plus coaches, and then two teams that size on the ice is going to exceed the pods. Exactly. So we are working with that. I can't give you an outright explanation for that magic number. That is a directive from Minnesota Hockey. So we just need to make sure that it is, well, actually, if you had 2 teams on the ice, so it's 2 teams, each team takes half ice. So
Right.
if you had a team with 14 players and 4 coaches, you would be 18. That would be well within the players on that side of the ice. Same with the other side. Where this gets to be a little sticky is in the lower levels, same ice, when you have a large number of players traditionally playing together in the lower levels. And we're working through that right now to make sure we never exceed the 50 individuals on the ice. I don't foresee it being as much of a problem. Correct, Dana, for upper levels?
Correct. And you're still allowed to have scrimmages. So there was questions around, okay, well, when you're having practices, you have 2 pods that don't intermingle. Well, if you have a scrimmage, don't you have those 2 pods intermingling? Scrimmages, because you are not standing by someone for a certain period of time between the Minnesota Department of Health getting instruction and not 6 feet apart. That is why the scrimmage policy per the Minnesota Department of Health and Minnesota Hockey is allowed and doesn't constitute as 2 pods intermingling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's definitely going to be workable. And again, the team managers and the coaches are all going to get direction on how to make this pod situation work, and it will work well. Oh, I have unstable internet, so if I break in and out, I apologize. I have another question, just sort of, and I've heard this a lot, is there may be people who have been at our home rinks for either some sort of AAA or something, and there's different rules. And all CCHA can do, and Dana, correct me if I'm wrong, is we are providing the rules that we are told we need to make from Minnesota Hockey and District 6 and giving it out to our memberships to follow. So I can't comment on what other organizations are doing or not doing at the rink, but these are the rules that we're told we have to have in place.
Correct.
Oh, I've also heard this a lot too. Given the limited number of spectators, Dana, are there any plans to resume live streaming of games?
Yeah, and we've had some conversation about that. And, one of the things that I'm researching is when there is the barn, people who have a subscription to that, are there rinks where that is active and that games will be active? In addition, that is going to be something we review at the volunteers meeting once teams are assigned. I will say there have been many best practices where teams have designated somebody to do a live stream via Facebook. And that's something we're going to let each team kind of work through independently, but definitely something that we are going to encourage to find maybe somebody who enjoys doing that, as it's been a great way for not only spectators who are local and can't be in the rink, but all the grandparents and relatives and friends who also want to chime in for the game.
Wonderful. Any other questions? I'm at the end of my question list in the chat. Well, if something pops up, feel free to email me at that address, and I'm happy, or Dana, and we're happy to answer questions.
So I just want to, thank everyone. I will say up to this point, the parents of the association and everyone has, yes, there's been some points of frustration, but after we've kind of explained the policy, people have absolutely been patient with, this is a very strange season that we're going to have. We are doing our best to communicate as effectively as possible. So please, if you have feedback for us of how we can communicate more effectively, etc., please don't hesitate to let us know. Otherwise, I just want to wish everybody good luck for the season, and thank you in advance for all you do to make this association great. So with that said, we will call it a wrap, and thanks everybody for attending. Take care. Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.